Today's highly informative video is about building good, crunchy tactical combat battlefields, and our subject today is line of sight. In the honor of the greatest D&D tacticians, Monty and Python, we are discussing how to not be seen.
Line of sight is another one of those incredibly important concepts for being able to design very tactically crunchy combats. For an idea of how heavily lines of sight might influence a battlefield, try Googling Counter-Strike angles for a second. No, go ahead, I'll be right here, I'll be waiting. Just pause the video, it's fine. Now, obviously D&D and Counter-Strike aren't the same game, but an awareness of this concept will really take your game to the next level when you're designing tactical combat battlefields. Line of sight seems simple on the surface. It's a line upon which you can see, and it stops when an obstacle gets in the way. One of the most important parts to consider about a line of sight is that a ranged unit can shoot anything along its length, and a ranged unit is capable of readying their action. That means that as soon as the ranged unit sets themselves up on a perch that has a good line of sight, they can start readying actions to just blast bad guys who walk through. Because of this, while you're setting up your lines of sight on your battlefield, you're going to want to maintain an awareness of any lines of sight that cross through heavy foot traffic areas or places that other units are going to have to move through back and forth. And if you put perches that have access to those lines of sight, you're going to want to put some sort of hazard, risk, danger, or other consideration in the perch, so that the ranged unit has a chance to make an informed decision about whether or not they want to do that. Okay, on to the discussion of obstacles.
But evilsqueegee, I thought that this was a discussion about lines of sight, and now you want to talk about obstacles.
Why, yes, curiously, strangely voiced viewer. I do want to talk about obstacles. Why? Because obstacles are the means by which we, the dungeon masters who are designing the combats in the first place, are able to manipulate and determine what the lines of sight are going to be. There are three very important kinds of obstacles. I will define them here and explain what they're good for. Walkables are any obstacle that prevent line of sight but can still be walked through. These work really, really well when you're looking to create an area of the battlefield that will favor a melee combatant. It's not advisable for ranged units to sit near these areas because melee units can just charge in and take away all that ranged advantage in an instant without risking anything. Seeables are the complete opposite of walkables. You cannot walk through a seeable, but you can see through it. This is a fantastic way to really beef up how dangerous your ranged units are going to be in a battle, because melee units have to go all the way around these obstacles, but ranged units can just shoot right through it the whole time. This effectively creates a longer distance the melee unit has to travel, which will translate into more turns the melee unit has to run to go get the ranged guy, which gives the ranged guy more chances to react before the melee can close in. Finally, there's the blockade. The blockade is the one that cannot be walked through and cannot be seen through. Effectively, this is a wall. Blockades are the building blocks of a lot of battlefield design. They'll help you in creating all those tactical points of interest like choke points, safe zones, etc. It's worth noting that you don't have to use just one or the other. You can mix and match these three for great effect. For example, picture, if you will, a length of blockade. Now, dispersed throughout that length of blockade are small sections which are actually seeable. Put a ranged unit on one side, and put a melee unit on the other side.
Hello.
Now, the melee unit does have to go all the way around, but because every so often the ranged unit has a line of sight, the melee unit has to very carefully consider each chunk of movement. They might not wind up spending all of their movement. They might wind up taking longer to go around than they normally would to assure their own safety. Meanwhile, the ranged unit does not have free reign to just pelt the living crap out of the melee unit as he runs around. He has to ready his actions, he has to choose his shots, he can't shoot him constantly. This setup here creates a very nice tactical conflict between a ranged unit who has an advantage and a melee unit who's struggling uphill to take control of the situation. It's nice to understand what tactical situation you're creating by using these elements. However, what sort of features on the battlefield could create these effects? Blockades is simple. Anything that's a wall, a solid, a tree, a burnt truck, the wreckage of an old ship, the bones of a dragon, big statues, piles of bodies. Seeables are a little more complex. Windows are a big classic one, as are sudden shifts in elevation, like big sudden shifts in elevation. A really good example of this is like a scaffolding, where you have to go all the way around to reach the dude at the top, but he can just pelt you the whole way through. You can also use pits. You can shoot right over a pit, but you can't walk past it. It's also worth noting that you can create a sort of pseudo-seeable by placing a ranged unit on the other side of a risk or hazard. Walkables are a little less easy to come up with ideas for, personally. The only really good ones I've come up with: thick smoke and fog. And ultimately, if I got really creative, I could probably say that there are zones on the battlefield where everybody is considered invisible, or the pseudo-solids, like, you know, this is a wall of water. And there you have it, a quick discussion about lines of sight and how to manipulate them and why you might want to. Let me know in the comment section down below if you've ever had any awesome experiences as a ranged unit because your DM did or did not understand lines of sight. I'm evilsqueegee. I'll catch you guys later. Adios. From the sparking wreckage of your Scout-class exploration vessel, you emerge. There are no flames, which tells you that oxygen is likely in low supply here. The planet was sighted on a collision course with Earth 2 years ago, and since then, humanity has worked endlessly to prepare and deploy a unit with the explicit purpose of landing on its surface to investigate whether or not anything can be done to prevent a potentially cataclysmic collision with the most sacred of planets, the birthplace of the human race. You wipe your eyes and scramble to turn on your helmet's floodlights, first turning to your ship in hopes of collecting any supplies that may have survived the crash. Your Instagram kit seems to have cracked. It's likely contaminated now with whatever bacteria are native to this atmosphere. No good. Facebook? Utterly crushed. You begin to panic, tapping frantically at the Twitch dashboard. If you can establish a live broadcast signal, you could... No good. Damn it. Finally, you turn to your Game Wisp injector. If anything can assist you out of this absolute discord, it'll be that. Thankfully, the needle seems intact. A quick injection later, and you're actually able to explore the wreckage. Like? You shout, coughing in your helmet. Subscribe? Your companions don't respond. As you start to dig, pulling away rubble and debris, you uncover a horrifying sight. Your own body, mangled in the crash, lies before you. What do you do?